All right, Jerry, I'd just like to welcome you onto the Organic Fitness Podcast. And I'm just up here in County Cavan, visiting the farm, fully registered organic. I suppose you should always give yourself an introduction to a brief background of what you currently do and get into this week's show.
Well, as you've already said, I'm an organic farmer and have been for about 22 years now. And what we actually do as of now is beef farming, totally grass-fed beef, organic and Angus cross. It's nearly all Angus cross. And we, for the last 5 years, I actually don't breed my own cattle because as I'm getting older and less fit, I took the option of not having breeding cows because they can be sometimes quite feisty on the calves, so I'm not as mobile as I used to be. So instead of breeding my own stock, I buy in stock from other farmers, and I actually buy from farmers, from land. I don't buy cattle in marts. I go farm to farm because I like to buy a bunch of cattle together. I would rather keep different bunches of cattle so that they know each other. Like cattle like company, and they like their own company, and they like the company that they're used to, and they actually do better and thrive better with their own kind, or with what they've been used to and what they've been reared to.
Yeah, but I would put you in the category that you're a good farmer and you're an organic farmer. If you would tell, I suppose, the listeners a little bit about what's the difference between organic beef and non-organic beef?
Yeah,
antibiotics,
yes,
food,
well,
feed,
yeah, organic beef, well, definitely organic grass-fed beef is a totally different product to conventional beef. Its actual makeup is omega-3s and omega-6s are totally different to conventionally grain-fed beef, and it's a totally different product. It sometimes may not taste much different, and our conventional beef does have quite an amount of grass feeding in it, and our beef is actually would have to be said to be quite good, but still saying that our organic grass-fed beef is a different product, totally different product. There's no sprays, no fertilizer, everything. The grass is natural, and in the last few years, I've actually gone back. I did reseed the same as every other farmer. I reseeded with ryegrasses, which I always railed against and never could understand why they were getting so much airtime when our older grasses, I always found that via poaching or longevity in swards, they lasted far longer. And the ryegrass, I have a big dock problem, which I have really built up over the years that I've been organic because of all the ryegrass I've had in my swards. The swards are too open and docks were able to come in. I realize this now, or I've realized it in a good few years, but all the wisdom, or all the so-called agricultural wisdom, was telling us all ryegrass and reseed and keep putting in reseed every couple of years, which was total baloney. Now the wisdom, thankfully, is starting to turn, and even on television programs like Eco Eye and Ear to the Ground, they've come now around to the reasoning that we should actually be using our own natural grasses, of which a lot of us have very little of it left, and our wildflower meadows and what have you should have been nurtured and kept, because a lot of the plantain and different herbs and that are in the older grasses were far more beneficial to stock than our ryegrass.
Interesting. And even the fact that right now what you're doing yourself is you're widening the hedges. You can expand on that point. I went around and toured and saw the animals extremely happy, and as a result of that, it's because of the treatment and what you're doing to them, just with their feed. But just expand on the point of the hedges, what you're doing with them.
Yeah, I've only just recently, because of the new cap proposals that are coming in, we are going to be allowed let our hedges actually get wider if we want, or we're not going to be, I suppose the better way to put it would be that the scrub areas that we were all penalised for up until now are going to be allowed as if it was normal forage area, or as a normal area of your fields, and even down to the point that sometimes hedges have to be cut or trimmed or whatever, and the spoil that comes off them, farmers heretofore and even yet will burn that spoil, which is very, very wrong. But they were forced to burn it. The wisdom in the advice of Teagasc and advisors and what have you was that you couldn't, you were supposed to burn and not have rubbish, what they classed rubbish, on your farm, which was totally wrong, because I often leave piles of bushes, and if I do cut a hedge, I'll pile the timber outside, and I find that blackbirds and robins and even sometimes thrushes will build in those piles of so-called rubble. So in fact, they are aiding wildlife, and our hedges were supposed to be trimmed and kept trimmed to a greater degree, and trimmed every couple of years, and this type of baloney. And I actually have a laneway that runs through my farm that have gorse, or as we call them, whins. And there was one bird in particular, and I've noticed that he has declined massively in the last few years, is the Dunlin. He's a little brownish, nondescript bird, a sort of a robin without a redbreast. And I used to find them nesting in the whins. And for the last few years, I think only one pair, I've only found one pair in the last few years. So I've decided now that the CAP is going to allow us to have more of this so-called rubbish, or old vegetation. It's not actually rubbish, it's agricultural waste, which is organic waste. And I'm going to actually allow my hedges to increase in size and girth and width, because the hedge that's only a metre, even a metre or a metre and a half, is absolutely useless to wildlife. It's not a wildlife sanctuary or a habitat. It's too narrow, and it's too thin. There's no protection, and there's actually, for the fields and for the animals, if you have your hedges wider. I remember a few years ago I had reason to go on agricultural outings to England and Scotland, and in those countries, albeit the fields were much bigger than here on average, the fields could be 20, 30 acres, but where they did have hedges, the hedges were massive. They could be as much as 10, 15 meters across. So there were little habitats in their own right. And it's great that at last we can, and I think I'm not alone. I've loads of farmer friends who actually would think the same, and other than they're sort of compelled to deal with their hedges every year and keep them trimmed for so-called good agricultural practices is crazy.
And the likes of gorse being actually a nitrogen fixation as well, which is important.
Correct.
Like so on smaller.
And it's actually a huge blocker of the wind. It's a wonderful windbreak. Yeah, a wonderful windbreak.
So even just to recap on that, the likes of the difference between organic and conventional: higher omega-3, anti-inflammatory. More people need to have that in their diet. Inflammation is the root cause of so many different illnesses, diabetes, serious chronic cancers and the like. After that, then I suppose we are registered with the likes of Western Main Price. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, there's actually it's an American foundation for what would you call it, to provide good food, or for the inclusion of good food in our diets, and proper good food, proper untouched food, like raw food, not refined, if you like. What's the other word you use nowadays? Unprocessed. Yeah. It's little processing in your food, and their big fame is that they have rallied on the side of what we call raw milk, which even in this country is very little known, and it's the milk that's unpasteurized. They have now at this stage, I think, only 6 states left in America where unpasteurized raw milk is not allowed to be sold. And in this country, about 10 to 15 years ago, our government and our co-ops probably were behind it as well. They tried to ban the sale of raw milk in this country, and thankfully they didn't succeed in that due to the efforts of people like Weston A. Price and some dedicated dairy farmers in this country. Pasteurizing would have to be, I suppose, hailed in its own time as being good because of lack of hygiene. And when hygiene was poor, pasteurization had its place. But now that hygiene is to such a high standard, unpasteurized raw milk is a superfood. And it's one that people should all be actually drinking. And most of my friends, my age and even younger, drink what I called coloured water, this light milk, which is a bastardization on milk, because it's nothing but just a coloured water, and everything that has been good in it has been harvested from it by the co-ops and used as products for making baby food and different whey products and everything has been taken from it, and then they sell it back at a super price to the poor customer.
And a raw milk, just to pull out that and extract that small bit, is a probiotic, natural probiotic. A lot of people are using probiotics that cost them a small fortune.
Correct.
Yeah, and gut health is so key and linked with immunity, increased, I suppose, energy levels. Why? Because your gut microorganisms are really important for breaking down bacteria that we otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to. Yeah. Gut health is key.
It's key, yeah.
Definitely key. And you were exposed talking before you recorded the podcast about someone reversing the likes of some symptoms with individuals.
Yeah, there's a lady. She's actually she's a Russian in origin, a Russian lady, and she's a doctor. And she had two sons. I actually went to a Western Price seminar in Thomond College in Limerick about 6 years ago, where she done a good talk on autism and food and the relevance of food to so-called diseases like autism. And since food has been so refined, all those type of illnesses or so-called illnesses have really come to the fore. But she actually outlined to us how two of her own sons had developed autism, which led her to do different studies. And by the time they were in their late teens, she actually had reversed their autism through the use and feeding them really good food. We have actually gone overboard, I suppose, in the Western world, where people say, what would you like to eat? Or will you eat this or will you eat that? Where you should actually eat, in a sense, what you're given, or like everybody should eat. If it's good, you shouldn't have a choice. Or I know when I was growing up, you didn't have a choice. You eat what you were given. We ate raw, unrefined food 99.9% of the time. And thankfully, I'm pretty healthy all my life, and okay, I have rheumatism maybe and arthritis and that, but it's sort of gene hereditary rather than food related. And I'm on absolutely no medication, and I wouldn't dream of taking medication when you have access to good unrefined food.
No, that's so important. I suppose another one, the fact that a lot of people are promoting specific diets such as no meat, vegan diets, and realizing that the fact that food is produced with the likes of fertilizer from the likes of the animals, and that food must incorporate the likes of such as your animals outside that do inevitably prevent the likes of, it's either fertilizer with synthetic fertilizer, which is no good for the soil.
Yeah, well, you know, if people think about it, and I know I would always have watched, one of my favorite pastimes would be watching Western films, the old Western films, and you look at the prairies in America, and you see the massive herds of buffalo roaming the prairies, well, that was the grasslands of the world were roamed by herbivores, and we as humans are carnivores, whether we like it or not. Some people might like to think that we should be vegetarian, and look at vegetarian has probably, we all should eat vegetables. There's no question of that. We all should eat vegetables, but at the end of the day, we are all meat eaters.
Designed that way.
We're designed as meat eaters. If you ever look at maybe some of Attenborough's films or some of the ones that maybe further out ones that were done with saying the Amazon or different places, and those peoples that are what we think has been nearly savages, if they do a hunt and they hunt, and what they actually hunt for is for their meat, because they need the meat. They actually need the meat in their diet. And when they kill an animal and not having means of refrigeration and what have you, they kill the animal and butcher the animal on the spot. And the first thing they do would be to take the liver of the animal and eat it raw and divide it among those that are after chasing down that animal and killing it. Like, some people might think that that's revolting, but if you think about it, those animals were there for a reason, and man is the top predator. So being a meat eater, the liver was the thing that was of the highest value in the animal. So the hunter needed to keep up his strength. So he was given the what would you say, the prize, yeah, of
first cut,
yeah, eating the liver.
And zinc,
and it was eaten
zinc
raw.
is high in most certainly liver, and zinc is linked with your immune system.
Yeah,
a lot of people would definitely do an immune boost.
Yeah,
but now for sure.
Yeah, it's funny when I even think about that. I often think of going back to the lady, the Dr. Natasha Campbell. I talked to her because as I would have always have gotten my own animals butchered, and we would eat all the parts of our own animals. Well, up until recently, and when I say we, I mean people. And then we stopped eating what we call the offal, but with the other European nations that would come in to work, the Poles and the Latvians and the Lithuanians, will all go and eat the offal of our animals that we won't eat, and they actually can get it for free because we put such little value on it. But one thing that I was actually interested in would have been the liver, and I asked this Dr. Campbell why the butcher would say to me, "I know your liver, there's fluke in that liver. You can't eat that liver. They wouldn't want to give it to you." But and I put this to her, and she said, "What? You mean?" She said that you wouldn't eat your liver because there would be fluke in it, or that there might be fluke in it. She said, "You get your liver and you take it home and you put it into your freezer, and you freeze it for 2 to 3 weeks at below -18 degrees, and everything that's in that," she said, "that's living is actually killed." And she said, even if it's not, what actual liver fluke is, she said, is its protein. So she said, it mightn't seem like something that edible, but she said, after all, she said, all it is meat protein. So it's funny that beef liver is rather strong as vis-a-vis lamb's liver or pork liver, but we've been eating it now for years, and we find my wife does minds kids, and she feeds kids after school when they come home in the evening before their parents bring them, and we oftentimes cook liver, and the kids absolutely love it. And they wouldn't, when my wife had asked them, will your mommy buy liver? No, we don't think so.
And your grandson was Samuel too, you know.
And most certainly, the next point I was going to bring up was the likes of using food as medicine. And we've lost touch where food has actually come from. And a lot of people are leaning towards, the first thing we'd often ask someone is, what supplements do you take, or what supplements could you take? Like, we should really be focusing on whole foods, because that's exactly where every vitamin comes and mineral comes from. The definition of supplement is to supplement what you cannot get from your diet. And a lot of things we touched on there, like protein is one of the things people are not consuming enough of. Whatever age you are, a child or as mid-adult or as we age, protein is key for maintaining muscle mass. Actually also prevents the likes of cravings, which is really important.
Yeah, and especially for, it's funny enough, like those Western A price people would tell us too that red meat is actually, the bad press that red meat gets is totally wrong. And especially for people, for guys like myself, for older men, we don't actually eat enough of beef. Beef is a huge superfood for older people, and the raw meat, of course, as well. Like a lot of people have osteoporosis generally in females, and a lot of it is down to the very fact that their diet is so lacking in calcium that they would be normally getting from the raw meat and from good pasture-fed hen eggs as well, which is now available, but a lot of people would rather buy the caged hen's eggs that are probably 50 cents a dozen cheaper.
That's it.
Good organic eggs.
But what's important is the fact that it's high quality protein sources that people need to be consuming more of, and that's exactly what you're producing. That's what I've been recommending to people, and as a result of that, with clients that I take on and mentor and coach, the idea is at certain times of the month, women need a higher percentage of red meat due to their iron levels being low. And that's a sure indication of that if they have low energy levels, that they need to consume slightly more red meats in their diet. No one diet suits everybody, and it's important to, I suppose, eat the foods that benefit you at certain times of the month, certain times of the year for optimal health.
Yeah, it's you know, there are things that sometimes pass us by. I've been a blood donor all my life, and my wife's the same. Since she had our family, she went back to giving blood, and we both give blood together. And we oftentimes see even younger people coming in, and which isn't a nice thing sometimes, that they get rejected, that their blood isn't taken. And a lot of the time is that their hemoglobin is low. But thankfully, and neither of us take any type of supplements, our hemoglobin is always way even beyond optimal. And even though we're getting older, and I've almost given 70 units of blood at this stage, and I thankfully never was rejected yet. And I often put it down. I often think about it. We often say, well, it has to be partly due to the good diet of healthy food that we do eat, because neither of us take any supplements or wouldn't even entertain taking supplements.
Yeah, but just even expanding on that point, your diet is quite good. You have a local supplier of organic eggs, vegetables, fruits, and in fact, you often do an exchange, which is something that people have lost major touch with. They can barter, exchange meat products for the likes of local produce, literally harvested only miles up the road.
Yeah, we have a young guy, Torrick O'Brien, down the road. He has
Let's get on to him.
I might say it's little. It's small. He probably has about a hectare of gardens, and he has his own tunnel, quite a large tunnel. But he grows some of the most beautiful vegetables. And one thing in particular that we love to get from him in season is his beetroot. It's just a killer. It's the taste of his beetroot, like vis-a-vis the bought beetroot, and we would eat even quite a bit of pickled beetroot out of the season. But the taste of his beetroot is just something to relish. It's just absolutely magnificent.
Beetroot is super improving your blood flow. Improved blood flow to the body is massively important for whatever activity levels you're at. Improved blood flow, carrying every vitamin and mineral in your body, getting it organic, less harsh chemicals, again, less toxins in your body. Your optimal levels are going to be through the roof.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm involved in an environmental study that was started in UCD earlier in the year, and I had a Polish lassie visit us in October, I suppose. But as it happened, I had some of this beetroot from Torrick O'Brien's allotment or garden, and I would visit. He sells to a green box system, but I would visit and we would gather and talk, and we'd just be like-minded. And he'd say to me, "Would you mind bringing the bigger beetroot?" He was some beetroot that would be
Like a
maybe
turnip, size of a
like
turnip.
the size of a turnip. And anyway, I actually had been with him the day before this lady came to do the work for the environmental, for the UCD study. And she, on her way through the sheds to knock off the electric fence, she saw them in a box and she said, "Oh, beetroot." And she was a Polish lady. And I actually gave her 5 or 6 beetroot when she was going home. And you'd think I'd give her £100. She was blown away. She said, "That is just magnificent." And she rang me back. Her mother had been visiting her from Poland, and some of it she juiced and the rest of it, and she even used the leaves, because I got all from the Turlock. I got the leaves, the whole lot, and she used the leaves. She cooked the leaves as well as the beetroot itself, and she just thought it was heavenly. She said that was the best beetroot she had gotten since the last time would have been in Poland.
But that's something we're completely losing touch with, where food has come from, and as a result, using top to tail of every different thing, whether it's an animal or it's like a vegetable. Vegetable or the beetroot is vegetable related to spinach, and that's why the leaves are edible. And that spinach is high in iron, which is calcium, there's that fiber good for gut health, absolutely massive. I just want to, round off this week's show by saying thanks very much for having me let me visit your farm, and the lovely couple of chats we had here. And
you're more than welcome, and welcome at any time. It's lovely to meet somebody young with such enthusiasm, and something that I've been really longing to meet young people, and that young people would be so enthused. I'm blown away by the younger people I've met for the last few years. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Joy. As I always end these podcasts, stay tuned, stay classy, and keep it organic.